A lot of the attention on the Chargers defense goes to the stars like Derwin James and Khalil Mack, but there's one dark horse player not enough people are talking about, and that is Tuli Tui Palotu, who I think could have double-digit sacks in 2025.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons together, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen as always, and to make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, he's bided his time, he's paid his dues, but now it's Tuli's time. Tuli Tui Palotu, to me, is the perfect dark horse candidate to break out in his 3rd season in the NFL, and he's going to have the opportunity to do it. And are we hyping up this rookie crop of offensive weapons, maybe getting a little bit too excited? I don't think so, and I would not put it past Joe Ortiz to make another move to continue to solidify this Chargers roster.
And then I think the question becomes, is there any move that can take the Chargers from where they're at right now as a playoff favorite to an actual contender in the AFC? But it is Fan Mail Friday, so thank you to all everydayers who contributed on today's show, not only asking questions on Twitter at LockedOnLAC or Instagram at LockedOnChargers, but also calling into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924. And we have a great one from one of our favorites, John Clark here, who says, so give me your dark horse candidate for the team this year, a guy we haven't spent a bunch of time on who will ball out in 2025. And David, I think that Tuli Tuipulotu, with the chance that he now has with Joey Bosa leaving and the actual promise that he's shown so far, is definitely someone we probably haven't talked about enough that could, as I said, be a double-digit sack guy and a huge impact player on this Chargers defense this year.
I completely agree, and I can easily see it. And I think from what you've seen from Tuli in his first 2 seasons, I feel like you should be pretty encouraged about the type of player that he is capable of being when he's out there at full force. In his rookie season in 2023, he was a fantastic run defender, had an 88.4 run defensive grade, and had 4.5 sacks and 51 pressures. So he's doing a really good job of getting after the quarterback and also being very stout and physical against the run. And then in 2024, his run defensive grade slips a little bit, but his sack numbers go way up. It's almost double. 8.5 sacks going up from 4.5 to 8.5. That's a pretty big jump with 734 snaps. And, you might say, well, that's not a whole lot. It actually outsnapped Khalil Mack. So Khalil Mack had 617 total snaps. Although that was a little bit of an anomaly. In 2024, or in the previous season, 2023, Khalil Mack had 934 snaps as well. But, we also know that Khalil was dealing with a little bit of an injury towards the middle of the season and that he had to miss a game from. And so that kind of factored into that. But Tuli Tuipulotu is a guy that left a lot on the table, Dan. I feel like he got very, very close to being able to finish off sacks. And, that 8.5 could have easily already eclipsed that double-digit sack number if he was able to just finish the play. I think this year, after having a good season against the run, having a pretty good season as a pass rusher, I think in his 3rd season, it's time to take all of those elements and put them all together, and we get to see more of that finished product of what Tuli can be.
Yeah, and I think a part of the reason you didn't see the dominant defense of run grade that, this year from him was just because of those missed tackles. 29.3%.
Yeah,
is rough. A big number. And also, if you're talking about double-digit sacks, he left double-digit sacks on the table. I'm not saying he left 10-plus sacks out there. Right. What I'm saying is had he converted on a couple more of those chances where he got pressure and had a chance to, make a play, he would have been a 10-plus sack guy last season. And it is interesting for him because he hasn't been a full-time starter, but was still able to put up 13 sacks in his first 2 seasons and also had the amount of snaps. Over 1,600 defensive snaps over the last 2 seasons, including the playoffs. So this is not a player that you don't know what he's capable of or hasn't had a chance to shine. He has been out there a lot, but now we'll have kind of that sole opportunity to be across from Khalil Mack and reap what he sows, right? And as good as Khalil Mack is on the other side, he should be able to get advantageous situations. And I think there is a great point brought up by a listener here, and another reason to think that he could take another step. This is from Lucas Williams, who says, "Hey guys, love the work you put in every day. Started tuning in at the beginning of last year, and I've been an everydayer since. My question is this: Tuli put in the second most special team snaps last season. What do you think about Kyle Kennard eating into his share on special teams, and in turn, Tuli Tuipulotu producing a more steady and productive season because of it?" Bolt up. Such a great point, David, because he has been a huge special teams contributor, and they really needed him to be that. And I don't know if Luke or Kyle Kennard will be able to replicate that, because Tuli has been a really good special teams player. I think physically he kind of fits that same mold. But this is another reason to think, hey, if he's solely focusing on defense really for the first time in his career, maybe that's another reason to think he could have a nice statistical jump.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the special team snaps for Tuli, he was on every single special teams unit. 337 special team snaps last year alone. So, yeah, he was all over those units. And I can guarantee you that number is going to go way, way down in 2025. And I do feel like it is definitely going to be Kyle Kennard taking over a good portion of those, but also
it ain't gonna be Bud Dupree. That's for sure.
Exactly. It could be Bud Dupree. Also, could be.
It won't be Bud Dupree.
Bridges.
That's the thing. I mean, he's an older veteran. They're not gonna have him.
No, it's not gonna be him. Yes. Yeah. So Kyle Kennard's the rookie. He's gonna be the guy that's gonna be asked to step in and make that make that contribution to the special teams start. So yeah, I think that's a brilliant point, and I think it will help him focus more on the defense.
And I do think hopefully what you see, and I think the consistency part here is a big part of it, because last year we saw 7 of those sacks in a 4-game span.
Yeah.
Right. And what does that tell you? Obviously, it means that 13 other games he had 1.5 sacks, and you can't always do it like that because his playing time and his, starter share of snaps and all of those things kind of bounced around throughout the season.
Yeah.
But this is a great kind of point to be like, hey, well, if you're looking on why he can improve or reasons to believe that he can take that next step, I would put this right up there at the top, and hopefully Kyle Kennard is ready to kind of be that guy to take over the reins on special teams. And if he's not the same kind of body types, but they did have, Delshon Phillips, who they brought in.
Oh, yeah.
They have Triquez Bridges. They have RJ Mickens, who will be a factor on special teams as well. They have some other guys there, but we know that, Kyle or Ryan Ficken likes his special teams players a certain way, and you have to be good to get on. And when he doesn't have the kind of players, we saw a pretty steep drop when they were missing the guys they were missing even last season on the special teams unit. But I didn't get to give my dark horse candidate for a guy who I think could really exceed expectations in 2025. And for me, I'd say it's Tyler Conklin is more of a really deep dark horse guy no one's really talking about. A very solid player that now is the best quarterback he's ever played with. Will Dissly is the incumbent. Oronde Gadsden is the exciting young rookie. But I think that a lot of people are sleeping on Tyler Conklin, a guy who has a 620-yard season in his career, has put up 4 straight 400-yard seasons, and his last 4 seasons averaged together would be 58 catches, 553 yards per season. So for that guy to be stepping in, and for Justin Herbert to have already kind of elevated Will Dissly to what he did, elevated Gerald Everett to what he did, to now I think get a more all-around player than both of those guys, I think people are sleeping on kind of how good Tyler Conklin could be this season.
Yeah, and Tyler Conklin is the model of consistency. He's a guy that, subscribes to that their everyday mantra that Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers like to instill, and he has very, very sure hands. Only 2 drops in his last 150 targets, which is ridiculous. This guy, he shows up, he does his job. I think he is a adequate blocker, and I think he is definitely going to surprise some people this season.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you take those numbers of what he's done over the last 4 seasons and ranked it against the people that played tight end last season, he would have ranked 14th in catches and 15th in yards. And I believe Eric Smith put out that he's 8th in receptions over the last 4 seasons, period. So that is someone that I think when you're talking about what Justin Herbert has been able to do as far as elevating the guys around him and giving guys their best seasons, he's a lot different than Jared Cook and Gerald Everett, right? And what they had last year from Will Dissly, even, who put in a really, really strong season. But that's never really been his game. Tyler Conklin has been a reliable, top half of the league receiving tight end. And I don't think enough is made about that when we're talking about the improvements on this offense. But another hopefully huge improvement will be what the Chargers get from new rookie Tre Harris. But how big of a season can he have? How quickly can he take over that wide receiver 2 role? And are we overhyping the offensive rookies too much? We're getting into all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances in major momentum shifts and can't-miss moments every time. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action than right now, and FanDuel makes it easy to stay in on the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big, and we still have one really big playoff series going on right now with the Knicks forcing a Game 6 in Indiana against the Pacers, and the home team are currently 3.5-point favorites. This has been one of the most exciting series of the playoffs so far, and of course, you could do what we did last time. It hit last time, why not again? The first basket score at plus 380, Jalen Brunson hit it in the last game, and you can get him again at that on Saturday night's game, or maybe Karl Anthony Towns is the guy they try to get involved early. You can get him at plus 650 with a little sprinkle. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets to use the rest of the playoffs and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. David, we still have more great fan mail Friday questions to get into, but we did have a little bit of a straggler buy or sell we wanted to use today because we have some other really good fan questions to go along with it. And this one comes from Harrison McClellan, who says, buy or sell, Tre Harris will have an 800-plus yard season with 6 touchdowns and solidify himself as wide receiver 2 before the bye week. Love the podcast every day. Keep it up. There's multiple things to kind of buy or sell here, David, because there's parts of this I think will happen and parts of it I don't, but I'm interested to see which parts you're buying or selling.
Yeah, so as far as the 800-plus yards receiving, I'm going to sell that. I think that's a very ambitious number.
It is.
And also, like, let's remember, like, in Mike Williams, who I think is a guy who's going to be a reason why that number is not going to get there. In his rookie season, he had 11 receptions for 95 yards and 0 touchdowns. So, like,
that's a top 10 pick.
Yes, he's a top 10 pick. So we do have to temper some expectations a little bit on what he can do. Now, I do love his ability to defeat man coverage, and I do feel like he is going to make some plays for the Chargers. So I like the 6+ touchdowns part of it. I can absolutely see that because he's a guy that you're going to have to divert some resources to, which, you know, I think he's still going to be able to make plays. He's good in man coverage, good at contested catch situations, which is going to mean that he's going to be a red zone weapon. So I think that's what I'm going to buy. But yeah, I'm selling 800+ receiving yards.
Yeah, that part is tough. What about the wide receiver 2 before the bye week?
Wide receiver 2 before the bye week. That's another one that I think I'm going to sell as well. I just think there is a lot of bodies that they have to put in between Tre Harris before he's able to really take over that role. Obviously, number one is going to be unimpeachable here with Lab McConkey, but I just think barring an injury, which, I mean, I think if we consider the injury history, maybe it is a little bit more likely than I initially anticipated. So, actually, after thinking about it, I'm going to buy it. I think there is a good chance there, just because I love to see a full 17 game season out of Mike Williams, but the chances of that happening, just given the career history, is probably a little bit less than we would want it to be.
Yeah, I totally understand your reasoning there. I'm in the same boat with you as far as 800+ yards. I don't see 6+ touchdowns is really tough. I'd probably put it around that number. So that one is tough. I think I would buy the wide receiver 2 before the bye week part of this as well. And I think a big part of that is he is wide receiver 4 going into camp. I think we would all agree, behind Ladd, behind Mike, behind Quentin Johnston even. That's just where things are going to start until, you can actually show what you can do. I don't think that it's crazy to think of him passing Quentin Johnston just because of the kind of, I think there's less flaws in his game. There's less obvious places you can't use him in the game, especially versus man coverage. And I think with Mike Williams, it might not be the best thing to do to pepper Mike Williams with 85 targets plus this year, right? Maybe he is someone that you go to in those big moments. you have making the big plays kind of when you need it. Either way, I don't think it's crazy because, I mean, I'm very high on Tre Harris, just generally speaking. But I think the other part of it is Harris can definitely be the guy that plays X outside the numbers, but he can also be the Z too. Like, there's a great chance we're going to see him, Mike Williams, and Ladd McConkey on the field together at the same time. And with his yak ability, which is probably something we don't talk about enough because he is a good yak guy, he can play the Z and take some of those drag routes and get some of those yards after the catch opportunities and do well with it because he's so big and physical after the catch. So that's the reason I'd say, hey, if you were telling me he's the one that's getting the second most targets out of the wide receivers by the bye week, I don't think that's crazy at all. But maybe that's part of the point here, because this is from a Wild 21 who says, are we overhyping the new wide receivers and tight end from the draft? Are they immediate impact guys? So that's two different questions right there. I mean, they're not all going to be immediate impact players. I'd say the biggest one, because we're not including Omarion Hampton in this, I think Tre Harris will be a pretty immediate impact player. Like, I think he's going to have, he'll be a very impactful offensive player for you as a rookie. The other guys I wouldn't necessarily put in that class, but I know that you don't necessarily think that there's too much hype around what the Chargers have, at least as far as the offensive rookies go.
No, especially because you have to consider what they had last year and why they made the picks that they did to bring in this volume of talent that they had to acquire through the draft. You mean last year it was Ladd McConkey and that was pretty much it. You got some stuff from Will Dissly every once in a while, and you had a couple of guys just kind of make some plays here and there, but the consistency part of it was not there, and obviously it reared its ugly head in the playoff game. After that, the Chargers had to go out there and add more talent. It was abundantly obvious and clear, so that's why they go get all of the guys they got, the two guys, the veterans, and Tyler Conklin, Mike Williams, and free agency, and that's why you go draft, those four different offensive skill players. I mean, overhyped? I don't think so, because they are going to come in and they're going to have a role. I mean, Tre Harris, like I said, can be that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 right off the bat. He's going to come in and make plays. I think KLS is a guy that's going to stretch the field, who is a guy that kind of the Chargers have really kind of been missing. They need that speed on the outside that has a little bit of a bigger frame that can really go run under a Justin Herbert pass. Like that's kind of some of the elements of the offense that's been missing. So I wouldn't say that they're overhyping what they are capable of doing. Now, expectations wise, I think overhyping expectations, that's two different questions.
Yeah, I mean, it can be, right? Because if your expectations are that Tre Harris and Omarion Hampton are going for 1,000+ yards each, and KLS
those are too high,
and Gadsden are both going to go crazy as well, like that, those are overhyping what your expectations are. So
yeah,
I would disagree, and I would say absolutely yes. Yeah, it's gonna get overhyped. It's gonna happen every year because not everyone's gonna go off, right? There was a time last year where we thought that Kimani Vidal and Brendan Rice were gonna be decent or impactful players for that offense, and they just weren't. Straight up.
Yeah.
We probably thought the same thing about Josh Palmer. You brought up Mike Williams. We definitely thought he was going to go nuts as a rookie, as a top 10 pick. He didn't. 11 for 95, like you talked about.
Yeah.
Josh Palmer, 33 catches for 353 yards. Quentin Johnston, a first-round pick. Another one, right? 38 catches, 431 yards. I'm sure we thought all those guys were going to hit bigger numbers than that. So you can't have KLS and Tre Harris being huge impact players, but also have Mike Williams having the resurgent season and Quentin Johnston taking another leap and improving again.
Yeah, there's only
with
one
Ladd
football.
McConkey doing what we know he's going to do, right? You can't have all those things. There's only one football, as you said, plus you're factoring all the tight ends and stuff as well. So
yeah.
The hard part is last year the Chargers offensive rookies, especially the earlier ones, were awesome. And for every Quentin Johnston, you have a Ladd McConkey. So we'll see how it plays out. But I do think this generally is a time around the year where some of these guys are going to get overhyped. But I do think this is a good question from social media, Herb, who says, who will contribute the most in this year's offense? Oronde Gadsden II or Keandre Lambert-Smith, a.k.a. KLS? David, who do you think?
Yeah, I think for me it's going to be KLS just because of the depth chart on the tight end side. I feel like Tyler Conklin's going to come in and take a lot of those opportunities that might have went to Gadsden had he not been there. But I think, the hierarchy of that tight end room, it's going to be Tyler Conklin, it's going to be Will Dissly, and then Oronde Gadsden the second. I think it's just something he's going to have to come in. Now, for KLS, I feel like, his role is already kind of there. He's a guy that, like I said, is going to stretch the field. I think he's going to be able to make some of the more impactful plays because of that. And I just think that Rondé Gadsden's got a lot of work to do to be able to climb that depth chart.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I had a really tough time with this because, I mean, David, all those things can be true. Keandre Lambert-Smith is wide receiver 5 right now.
Right.
Period. Like, that is what it is, right? Like, how often, like, go back and look at who the 5th wide receiver was to begin the Chargers last season and tell me what they did last year, right? It was probably Brendan Rice.
Right.
Right? Like, and so I think it is maybe closer than that, because I would say that although he is wide receiver 3 or 5, they play with 3 wide receivers at a time at times, right? And although that Rondé Gadsden's probably tight end 3, they play multiple tight ends at times, right? They're not going to play 3 tight ends more than likely, but either way, he's right there. I think the interesting thing is both guys bring the vertical element to the offense, and there's reasons to want to get both of them on the field. The other part of it is Chargers seem to be very invested in KOS when they drafted him. Just that, the video, Sanjay Law talking to him, all that stuff makes me think, I mean, especially they also took him ahead of him, right? They had a tough decision between these two. They went with KOS not knowing they were going to be able to double dip and get a Rondé. So I would say a Rondé Gadsden right now because I think he's just more different than than what the Chargers have at tight end than what KOS brings. Even as a speed guy, Ladd McConkey's a 4-3 guy too. Tre Harris is also a deep threat. Mike Williams is also a deep threat. He does bring that speed, but you have other deep threat guys as well. I don't think they have anything that stands out as much as a Rondé Gadsden's receiving ability at the tight end position, which just seems special. It's easy for me to see how it translates. KOS also had a much worse quarterback, so a much lesser evaluation. But we still have more great stuff to get into because we do have to talk about if there are any moves that takes the Chargers from playoff favorites to actual contenders and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. David, we still have more great Fan Mail Friday questions to get into, and thank you to all the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. As always, if you need a second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino as they make you the most informed NFL fans this offseason, keeping you up to date with all the news around the league, not just from one team to one team, but everything going on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast from. We have this from another frequent question asker here, David, from Chris Saiz, who says, what do the Chargers have to do between now and when the season starts to convince you that they are legit contenders in the AFC? Do you think this has to be proven in season? What do you think?
Yeah, I think for me, it's still the biggest issue that hasn't been addressed, and it's just continuing to solidify the interior of that offensive line. I think you look across the different position groups and what the moves that the Chargers have made, I feel like they've done a very good job of addressing and solidifying and deepening a lot of those position groups to make you, worry a little bit less. But there's still one kind of glaring need, and it's still who is going to be the left guard, who is going to be the center, and is there any clear and obvious upgrades on the roster? And right now, I don't know how anybody can comfortably say that the answer is yes as of this moment in time. So we know that, last year with Joe Ortiz, if he sees a position group that he feels like it is lacking, and Jim Harbaugh is saying, hey, I need another one of these, then he's going to go out there and he's going to go get it done. So I do feel like that's a position, and maybe they are waiting for training camp to evaluate and kind of see what they have and where they have it, but I just don't want them to wait that long. I just feel like, to me, it's so clear and obvious that they have to address it, but I feel like to them, they probably feel like they have enough guys in the room to be able to put it together.
And it's something we've said the entire offseason, right? Without trying to, sound all of the alarms and wave all the red flags. We said it after free agency when they didn't do it, but they still had the draft. And Joe Ortiz is at a press conference saying, well, we won 11 games, right, Daniel Popper, right? And it's like, yeah, in spite of those guys, not because of them, which I think is a key distinction. But I do think that still remains the glaring issue. And I just think that there are guys on the market who would be upgrades to them. We've talked about them, the Brandon Sheriffs, the Will Hernandez's are out there. But I would say that neither one of those guys, neither one of those single additions would put me over the top and be like, okay, the Chargers are true contenders to be a Super Bowl team. Now, I think this is a roster that I'm much more inclined to think can win in the playoffs and is a deeper roster, and I think has solved some of their weaknesses and some of the things that hurt them last season, especially offensive firepower standpoint specifically, running game standpoint specifically. But at the same time, I don't think there's one single addition that takes them from where they are right now to being a Super Bowl team. But it could be, I could feel differently because they could attack it with numbers like they did last year, acquiring Elijah Molden after June 1st.
Yep.
Tony Jefferson, Tier Tart, Bud Dupree, Hassan Haskins, all guys who were signed after the draft. So I think we could see, I don't think we'll see as much because I think that was a roster that needed more turnover last year for sure. And there was a lot more easily attainable spots on the roster. But I do think that there could be changes to this roster where I do feel differently about it when it is nearer to the season than I do right now. But we do have a great voicemail here from Nick, who has one thing that he thinks would pretty much guarantee the Chargers could be a playoff team and maybe even win once they get there.
Yo, what up, Bolt fam? 2 months away, baby. 2 months away. So here's my question. My name's Nick, by the way. If I told you our running backs are going to average over 4.5 yards per carry and we have a running back to rush for over 1,000 yards, with knowing how good our defense was last year, would that be enough to convince you right now that we are a double-digit win team or a team that wins a playoff game? Thanks, guys.
100%. I would sign up. If you told me that right now, I would tell you not only the Chargers a double-digit win team, but they are going to win a playoff game and have a chance to win multiple. Because there's one thing we talked about, even just touched on yesterday, David, which is this. If you're telling me great quarterback, wide receiver one, a good running game, and a good defense, that's teams that win in the playoffs, right? That's the big things you really want the most. So I 100% think that if you're going to guarantee me those things right now, I'm telling you the Chargers are winning a playoff game.
Well, I mean, I'll just break it down very simply. I mean, to gain a first down, you need 10 yards. If you're telling me that you're getting 4.5 yards every single time that you run the football, you run it twice and you got 1 yard to go on third down. The Chargers' average yards to go on third down last year was 7. They were third and 7. That's the situation that they were in a lot of the times because they did not have that consistent running game. They didn't have that ability to really get after those short down and distance situations and really stay ahead of the sticks and attack. If you have that type of running game, not only does it help you win games, it travels, it wins in the playoffs. Absolutely 100%. I would sign up for that right now. And yes, that would mean to me playoff success.
And I also think that you're, combining that with the additions of a Tre Harris and a KOS and Mike Williams and Tyler Conklin and a Rondé Gadsden, right? Which I think far outweighs the loss of Josh Palmer and Stone Smart. So, Josh Palmer couldn't outproduce Quentin Johnston last season at the end of the day, right? Which is what it is. So I would definitely think that is a team that could win a playoff game for sure. And I do think that is kind of the one thing that you're hoping to see and something we assumed they would have last year. You have to have a running game that's not going to disappear. And it's not just about, hey, are you going to average 4.5 yards per carry for the season? But are you going to consistently do it week in and week out? Or have one guy in J.K. Dobbins who's averaging 5 yards per carry, right? But they only actually eclipse like 150 yards 4 times the entire season. So I'm just coming off those at the top of my head. But either way, it's about consistency. And it sounds like that's what you're guaranteeing. And I'm telling you, that's a team that's going to win a lot of games. But we still have one more here from Athir, who's not as afraid of a couple games on the schedule as maybe some Chargers fans are.
Daniel, David, this is Athir. 3 home games I cannot wait for. Commanders, overachiever. Steelers, who's your quarterback? And the Texans, who is your offensive line? Jesse Minter defense is going to be licking their chops this year. I cannot wait. 3-0, baby. Let's go. What do you got to say? Love you.
I love you. It's a good point, I think, on 2 out of the 3 counts. I don't think the Chargers will go 3-0. I don't think it's impossible. But I would say that the one I would push back on is the Commanders. I mean, a team coming off of an NFC Championship game appearance. I don't think you luck into that, right? Maybe they got a little hot at the right time for sure. But the one thing I would say to his point was something me and you talked about yesterday, also from Benjamin Solak's 100 nuggets he put out there. The Commanders were 20 out of 23 on 4th down last year. Something like 27% of their points came off of 4th down conversion drives.
Crazy.
That's the best kind of percentage with that volume this century. So that could definitely regress to the mean. But the part of this that I want to really stick on, David, and the reason I wanted to use this voicemail today was I really do think the success of this Chargers season could end up coming down to how they fare against two teams in the Steelers and the Texans who they lost to last season. Because if you're saying they beat both of those teams right now this schedule that has 9 playoff games on it, right? Games against playoff teams, that seems a lot different. The math totally changes if you're winning those games. So I think that is the part where I'm like, hey, those games are huge barometers, are huge measuring sticks to how much better that you've been since last season.
Well, and I think you're catching both of those teams at a very good time, and a time that they're kind of in transition. You know, you get the Texans,
frauds.
Right? Yeah, you got the Texans. Who, that offensive line is looking scary, and not in a good way. Scary as in I'm scared for C.J. Stroud and his health this season. That's
right.
That's kind of what I'm referring to. And then with the Steelers, they've had a lot of turnover, a lot of change, shipped out receivers, don't know who's playing quarterback. So, I think that definitely is also an organization that's kind of in flux. They don't have a lot of stability at this moment in time. But you can't really say that about the Commanders. They didn't really lose a whole lot of people, and they probably got a little bit better in the draft. So, I don't think they're going to be as amazing as they were last year, but Jaden Daniels is a great player. I mean, and he's a guy that deserves and has earned some respect, coming in and being so good so quickly. So I think, 2 of those 3 games, I'm not intimidated by the Steelers or Texans. I absolutely think that the Chargers can beat and should beat both of those teams. But that Commanders game, I still think that's going to be a tough one.
Well, just think about it like this. Like, those were 2 of the losses, including the playoffs, that you had all of last season. And this is a team that only had 7 losses, including the playoffs, right? 11-7 last season. So you're talking about 29% of your losses from last year you could turn around while also showing that you're beating teams that were in the playoffs last year. And maybe more importantly than that, showing that this offense can show up against good defenses. And that honestly might be the most important thing here, because if you go back and look at last season, the teams that killed them were the teams that just throttled them. I mean, the Ravens for sure. The Steelers in that game absolutely throttled that offense. The Chiefs did well against this offense all of last season too. And then on the playoffs, you got dominated by a Texans defense. We talk about the offensive line. That defense is still disgustingly good. So it still scares me a little bit. Steelers don't scare me nearly as much, because even if they have Aaron Rodgers, that's a game the Chargers should still win. And if they can win both those games, I think that's a huge sign that this isn't the same team that we saw in 2024. But that's going to wrap up a great Fan Mail Friday. Thank you to the everydayers out there. And an important scheduling note that I have to give really quickly is that this is the last show of May, meaning that next show will be the start of June, which means us going into off-season mode, still bringing you the most Chargers content of any Chargers content producers out there. But we are going down to 3 shows a week, which will usually be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But if there is any news, if anything big happens, you know that we're always going to be here to talk about it. So make sure you are here on Monday with the next show. Maybe we'll do a buy or sell on Monday, but we will continue to bring the most comprehensive coverage, the most total coverage out of any Chargers show out there. So to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding the show every day on all of our social media at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, where you can put your buy or sells in as well, or call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924. We had some great questions we couldn't use today because they're just far too long, way over 30 seconds. It has to be around 30 seconds to get on the show. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. We'll be back with you guys on Monday. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.